Hey Dad, last episode we talked about whether U.S. citizens are ever detained by immigration agents and why even rare mistakes matter. Today, I want to go one layer deeper because this question comes up a lot, whether people say it out loud or not. Who is the Constitution actually for? A lot of people believe the Constitution only protects citizens, that if someone isn't a citizen, especially if they're undocumented, they don't really have constitutional rights. That idea sounds intuitive, but it's not what the Constitution or the courts actually say. So let's slow down and walk through this carefully. The Constitution uses two different words over and over and over again: citizens and persons. And that difference is not accidental. Some rights are explicitly limited to citizens. Things like voting, running for federal office, certain political protections. But many of the most fundamental rights, due process, equal protection, protection from unlawful searches and seizures, are written to apply to persons, not citizens, persons. That distinction matters. The Supreme Court has addressed this question for over a century, and the answer has been consistent. If you are physically present in the United States, you are considered a person under the Constitution, regardless of your immigration status. That includes people who entered legally, people who overstayed visas, and even people who entered illegally. That does not mean everyone has the same rights in every context. Immigration law is complicated, and some rights are more limited in civil immigration proceedings than in criminal cases. But it does mean this: you do not lose your humanity or your basic constitutional protections just because you are not a citizen. One of the earliest cases on this goes all the way back to the 1800s. In that case, a law looked neutral on paper but was applied almost entirely against Chinese immigrants. The Supreme Court ruled that even non-citizens are entitled to equal protection under the law if they're living here. Later cases expanded on this idea, especially around due process. The court made clear that once someone is inside the United States, the government can't just detain, punish, or expel them without following basic standards of fairness. That's where due process comes in. Due process doesn't mean you get to stay. It means you get a fair process. You get to know what you're accused of. You get an opportunity to respond. You're not disappeared into a system without explanation. This distinction matters a lot, especially in immigration debates, because people often mix together criminal punishment and civil immigration enforcements as if they're the same thing. They're not. Immigration proceedings are civil, not criminal. That means people don't automatically get all the same protections you'd have in a criminal trial. But civil doesn't mean lawless. The government still has to follow the Constitution. And here's a really important nuance. There is a difference between someone trying to enter the country and someone who is already here. Courts have historically given the government more power at the border, especially for people who haven't been admitted yet. Once someone is inside the United States, even unlawfully, the balance changes. At that point, constitutional protections attach. That's not a political opinion. That is settled law. Now, some people hear this and think, so you're saying immigration law doesn't matter. No. Immigration laws absolutely matter. Deportations can still happen. Removal orders can still be issued. But the process matters just as much as the outcome. The Constitution doesn't promise everyone the same result. It promises a fair procedure. And that's where things get uncomfortable for a lot of people. Because if constitutional protections apply to non-citizens, then abuse of power in immigration enforcement isn't just an immigrant issue. It's a constitutional issue. It affects how much unchecked authority the government has over anyone. When you weaken protections for one group of people, you don't create a special exception. You create a precedent, and precedents don't stay contained. So when we talk about citizens being detained by mistake, or people being denied hearings, or families being separated without explanation, this isn't about whether someone deserves sympathy. It's about whether the government is following the rules that protect all of us. Dad, the Constitution doesn't belong to one group of people. It doesn't turn on and off based on immigration status. It belongs to persons inside the United States. That doesn't make the country weaker. It's what makes it a country governed by law instead of fear. Next episode, we're going to tackle crime because that's where this conversation often jumps next. But before we do, it's important to understand this foundational truth. The Constitution isn't just for people we agree with. It's for everyone it says it's for. And that's where real freedom starts. Let's discuss in the comments.